Welcome to the Holistic Career Change Podcast. Spoiler alert, we don't discuss conventional, linear, boring career change here. This is the place where we talk about finding an aligned career path that feels like an extension of who you are, where you get paid for being yourself. Forget personality quizzes, soul-crushing scrolling on job sites, and breaking your brain trying to find your why. Join me and many other career changers who've changed their career holistically by first defining who they are at their core and then using this blueprint to design a fulfilling career or business. We use the mind-body-soul approach, and we take into consideration the complexity and multidimensionality of all that you are and want to represent in the world. This is where purpose-led careers are born and built. I'm your host, Vilma Osaita. Let's go. Hello, welcome back. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to be sharing today's conversation with you because it's really one of those episodes that I know, like I really deeply know, will resonate with so many of you. I know there are aspects that are so common. Especially for those of you who are navigating your own career transition and your own personal growth journeys. Because today I'm joined by the incredible Rebecca, who was part of the Holistic Career Change Group program. We finished now, I think we wrapped up a few months ago. And let me tell you, Rebecca's story is, like I said, one of those that will speak to anyone who's ever felt like they were living their life for everyone else's approval, or anyone who struggled with perfectionism, or really anyone who's felt overwhelmed by having too many interests and not knowing which path to choose. And first of all, I love Rebecca's energy, so I'm really jealous that you get to experience this for the first time. She's very grounded, very kind, but she also has this strength about her. And we'll also talk about the business that she ended up creating and launching. But her motto kind of became question boldly, care deeply, and persist with purpose. And I feel like it summarizes her energy so much. When Rebecca joined the program, I feel like that was exactly the right moment in her life where she knew that something had to shift. However, it wasn't such a dramatic, dark period like sometimes I would experience in my line of work. It was just this deep knowing that she needs more clarity. And, you know, she often, you'll hear in the episode, she says that she's been describing her as sort of a serial class taker. She's always learning, she's always growing, but she really struggled to find clarity about what direction to actually pursue. And I know that will probably sound familiar to many of you. So in our conversation, she will share about some of her childhood memories, which I found really interesting, that completely shaped how she saw herself and that set her on a path of people pleasing and what, you know, she often would refer to as a good girl syndrome. And I think so many of us will see ourselves in her story, especially as women. And she talks about how this led her to climb the professional ladder, and she would always be taking on more tasks and more responsibilities. And that was not because she wanted to, but because she desperately wanted to be liked and appreciated and approved of. And this, of course, then fed into her perfectionism and that belief that there must be a right way or a wrong way to do things. And if she could only figure out the right way, she could finally get that validation that she was seeking. And we just touch on so many interesting aspects of her and of being part of the Career Change Group program, and just learning how to navigate authenticity and how to find alignment. We talk about what we beautifully call her loud body and how her body has, throughout this program and hopefully beyond, has become this incredible navigation system that speaks to her so clearly when something is misaligned or something feels off. And we also talk about how now she can use this internal wisdom to make decisions that are truly aligned with who she actually is. We also explore, as you know, like I talk about human design a lot, especially Leila on this podcast, and we explore her discovery of being an emotional projector, what that means, and how this understanding really allowed her to change not just how she shows up in her career, but also how she sets boundaries in her personal relationships as well. And she also will share some limiting beliefs that she had to question and ultimately shatter. Like, for instance, thinking that she was terrible at making decisions or that she was someone who was never finishing anything. And the shame and sort of self criticism that she carried because she couldn't understand why she showed up differently than other people. And that I feel like something that really added to her confusion and her inability to really understand aspects of herself and put them all together in a way that would allow her to define her next aligned step. And I feel like what's so beautiful about Rebecca's story is that she really lets us into and shares with us how she learned to approach herself with more grace, more compassion, and more acceptance. And now that she understands more of her intricate mechanisms, that is essentially what allowed her to really land at this more aligned direction that she will probably continue to refine because that's what we all do it's the journey that never ends. And we also touch about, again, a very common topic, which is the shiny object syndrome, something I know that many career changers will relate to, and how to essentially recognize your patterns and build that self-awareness so you could then course correct, especially when you feel like you're slipping back into the old familiar patterns. And that I feel like especially true and challenging for those of us who are recovering people pleasers. And towards the end of the episode, that's why I would really invite you to listen till the end. She will share about how she is building this beautiful multi-potentialite business and how she arrived at that idea and that realization. And she really talks honestly about the challenges that she had to overcome, like, for instance, even comparing herself to other people or even women within the group, thinking that perhaps their path was a little more straightforward than hers. And it really took her some time to accept her multi-potentialite nature and realize that she didn't even want a straightforward path. She didn't want a cookie cutter business. She wanted a business that felt like her while still protecting her peace. And we also beautifully discuss some of the patterns that, again, I see many of you fall into, like how not get stuck in the nitty-gritty details, especially at the beginning stages of building a business, and how sometimes you really just need to get stuff done and then you can evaluate and refine later so you wouldn't get stuck in that over analyzing and overthinking mode. And we also talk about, especially when you're a multi-potentialite, so for those of you who have a lot of interests, how to start building your business but phase it out and discern which are the distinct phases in how you'll be growing and scaling your business. Because a lot of the times we are overwhelmed. We think that we need to start it all at the same time, launch it all at the same time, which just leads to overwhelm and confusion. And one of my favorite parts, actually, I love all of this episode, but one of the parts that I love the most is how she'll share with you how all of the previous roles, all of the previous experiences, even if they seemed unrelated, are now actually coming together so perfectly to support her in this new aligned business that she is creating. I just feel like this conversation is just so grounded, but it's also packed with wisdom and vulnerability and just practical insights that I know will serve so many of you on your journey. So grab your drink, get comfortable, and let's dive into this conversation with Rebecca. Enjoy. Hi, Rebecca. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Me too. Well, did you listen to the podcast before we started working or not?
I did. Actually, I've been listening to the podcast since 2022.
Wow.
I mean, this is kind of a funny story, but I was looking for a career coach back in 2022,
Mm.
and I was listening to your podcast, and there was another coach that was looking, that I was very interested in, and I ended up hiring him and knowing that I would come back to you at some point. So
Interesting.
I felt like I needed a career coach,
Mm.
but as I think it turned out that I needed a life coach at that stage,
Oh,
because what I ended up getting from working with him was just much more life stuff and
mm.
much less career stuff. And he was the first person to ever tell me to ride the wave, which we know has come up with my emotional projectorness and, riding that emotional wave. So I think I needed whatever he was offering at that moment. And then when I came back to you for the group program, I think it was exactly the right time that I needed you and the women in the group.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about that because also it was interesting experience to observe you within the group. But before we go there, could you please introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yes, of course. So my name is Rebecca, and I never know how to describe myself, but I'm going to say I'm a storyteller. I like to communicate. I like to talk. I like to write. I'm a wife, a dog mom, a spoonie, which means I have chronic and invisible illness. And then I know a lot of your listeners are interested in the astrology and the human design. So I'm a 2/4 emotional projector and an Aquarius sun, Libra moon, Capricorn rising with quite a bit of Scorpio in my chart.
Yeah, you have very interesting, unique energy about you. I will tell you. When I saw your chart, I was like, this is interesting. It's just a little bit of everything. It's a little bit of everything
Yes.
here. And I think maybe that's where we can go in the next because the conversation is taking us there. When you showed up, one of the first, like, I guess, impressions that I got of you, and now I know that you are, multi-passionate and you have a lot of interests and you've always been, even though we even unpacked that a little bit, but I could have sworn that you were a manifesting generator because that's the energy you gave off of like, oh, I like this and I like this and I want to do this and I want to do this and I start this course and never finish it. And I'm like, she must be a man gen. And then you were like, I'm a projector. I'm like, oh wow, okay, didn't see that coming. So I think that alone was really interesting. But I guess I would assume, and I'll obviously let you answer, one of the reasons why you did want to get some support was because you had a lot of things going for you and things you're interesting in, but you didn't quite know how to ground into that or choose them or combine them. Could you share what was happening in your life at then and what were you struggling with and why did you feel like you might need some support with it?
Yes, I think I was looking for clarity. That's the short answer. The short answer is I I felt like I was spinning my wheels. I had all these interests. I didn't know what I wanted to pursue. I was taking all the classes, which I know now I think was more of kind of avoiding actually making a choice and doing something. I was I was chasing all of these certifications and I do love learning. So obviously I took something away from all of those different courses. And in some cases I found out what I didn't like, and some cases I found out what I did like. But I really needed help, I guess essentially becoming a projector because I was functioning as if I were not a projector. And I didn't even know that I was doing that. So that was a big piece of I think why I ended up with you at this moment that I was in this group. And then in terms of kind of like what was going on, I think it was again 2022 when I actually took a leadership course and I was so excited about management and leadership and the potential. And I was like, I don't want to be an executor. Like, I don't want to be sitting at my desk and just doing all this work mindlessly. I'm like, I want to like see the big picture. And I think that was kind of when the shift happened for me and why I was looking for that clarity.
So basically, and we can talk a little bit maybe about your story. That's something you and I discussed before recording. Seems like for the longest time, you considered yourself, or maybe the qualities that were reinforced within you and validated were that of a great executor and someone who's detail oriented, right? And someone who's always there and
Yes.
someone who's reliable. And so you really bought that and you were like, okay, this is my value. This is what I provide. Am I right? Is
Yes. 100%. Yes. I was the person that everyone would go to for everything. I had one colleague that actually used to say to me, Rebecca, you're everything to everybody. And I
wow.
used to I used to feel it in my gut, like I don't want to be that. Like you all want me to be that, and I have been that, but I was like, I don't think that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Mm. But again, you didn't really know better, right? Because this is something
Yes.
you were validated for, probably got raises and praises for. So then it's really
Yes.
hard.
Yeah, and I think that kind of I think I could start based on what we were talking about before this is I can kind of tell you a little bit of the story of like how I got there, I think. This one vivid memory that came up, I know when we were at the beginning of this process and I remember you prompted us whether I don't remember if it was in one of our live calls or in one of the worksheets where you kind of asked us to think about those vivid moments from our lives that kind of got us to where we are. And one of them that really came up for me was I was a little girl. I was sitting, at the top of the stairs in our family house, and my dad was laying in his bedroom in the dark, like flat on his stomach. And I don't think I've even ever told my parents that I remember this, and I just remember sitting at the top of the stairs and being like, what's wrong with dad? Like, why I never see my dad sick. I would never see him really like in that state. So sitting there and looking into this room, this dark room, and being like, what's wrong with dad? It kind of brought up in me, well, is it something I did? Like, was I not a good girl? Like,
Mm,
I want to make sure that I'm doing what's expected of me and doing what people, are asking of me. I want to be that good girl, right? So that my parents are not sick. I now know that he had migraine, which is now one of my conditions that I have. So I didn't know until 20 years later that that's what was going on for him at that moment. And now I can totally relate because I have those moments myself. And I now have a lot more empathy for what people are going through because I understand that now. But when you're a child, you don't understand. And so I think that that's kind of why I ended up becoming a people pleaser. And, I was chasing professional development. I was trying to climb the ladder. I was taking on tasks and responsibilities because I was good at them, right? Because people would say, Rebecca, you're great at organizing this. You're great at editing that. You catch all the details. And I loved the recognition. I
mm.
mean, that's one thing that is coming into my head right now is that I wanted that recognition. I loved that recognition. And that's why I kept doing all those things. I mean, ultimately, it brought out perfectionism in me that didn't feel good. Just because somebody says you're good at something doesn't mean you actually like doing it or that you want to do it. And so I think that's kind of where it comes full circle is just being overwhelmed by the expectations that other people have of you. And then now putting those expectations on myself because I think that that's how I'm supposed to be. Back to the human design is functioning as a generator or a manifesting generator and not realizing that that's not how I'm supposed to function at all.
That is really powerful. And I'm sure that a lot of people will resonate with that, right? That people pleasing, and we call them like key decisions like we make really early at our childhood. A lot of the times, because we live in the me-centric in universe. If something is wrong around me as a child, I assume is because of me. Because I don't have a capacity to understand that there are other forces and dynamics involved. That's not how we process the world. So seeing your dad being something was off, which was unusual, it was like, what did I do or what can I do to make it better? And then we take that decision unknowingly and we apply it to all the situations and relationships. And then we're like, oh, like I feel like I'm doing all the right. This is what I hear all the time. I felt like I was doing all the quote unquote right things and I was working hard and
Yes.
I got married and something still feels off. Or to your point, like we always say, with you, Rebecca, we would say a lot during the process is like, your body is so loud and that's so beautiful. It's painful, but the
Yes.
body is always showing you where something is misaligned for you.
Yes. I feel that so deeply because my body's always been loud, but I didn't really know what it was telling me. Even coming into this program, like I had gotten a little bit better at listening to my body because I've been doing self-development for so many years in one way or the other. But really, like I've started, I think the biggest change, especially coming, working with you and working with the other women in the group, it was allowing myself to relax and into the experience of what the body is telling you. There was one exercise we did where we had to like recognize, the sensations, I think it was.
Like
And
emotional
I,
vipassana
yeah.
or body say yes or no. That's internal navigation.
Oh, yes. Yeah, the internal navigation, the yes, no. And I remember saying like, my hand starts like wiggling. Like I don't remember what the exact terms I use, but I'll get like little like spasms or like I'll feel it in my fingers when something's, just not quite right. And I'll sometimes have the feeling that I need to say something. And then I'll get that feeling in my fingers. And I'm like, nope, you're not supposed to say it yet. You have to wait. And that was a piece that I never had before. Like I was never so in touch with my body, like telling me yes or no, that was just a huge game changer for me.
Especially for you, right? Because your body is loud. And I love that because I really saw a massive change within the program. And I think for you, maybe I even saw changes around these aspects even more than perhaps career. And we'll talk about career because obviously that you are building a business,
Yes.
right? We'll get there. But I feel like for you, one piece was the projectedness of what you said is really because just for the context within the group, we did quite a lot of experimentation. Even when we had group calls, I would say, well, a manifestor usually would want to go first. A lot of the times it's just how they're built to initiate and lead. And
Yes.
Catherine, who was the only manifester, I'll have her on a podcast, she would raise her hand. She was like, actually, I do feel like I want to go first. That it's Kat, my human design mentor, would say it's just mechanics. It's how our bodies are made.
Mhm.
And then I remember you were someone who at first you were like, oh, I really feel like I want to add or share. And then you decided to experiment with your strategy, which is to be invited. Um,
Yes.
right? Even on the calls where you're like, oh, like I want to say, and then you would allow yourself to be invited. And sometimes you would have to stay till the end of the call to be invited in. And how did that feel for you experimenting with just that strategy?
Oh, at the beginning, it was taking all of my willpower not to raise my hand. Like I'm so used to being like the voice of a group. And when silence happens, like at work especially, I feel like I have to either say something or call on somebody or try to bring people out of their so it was so weird for me to be sitting there and like I said, like I would feel my body move forward. Like, okay, you're gonna be next. And then I feel that in my fingers and go, nope, you're not supposed to go next. As we got through the program, by the end, I think I was always going last or next to last. And it felt really good because I was able to listen to what everyone else was saying and hear the coaching going on. And then that would help me determine what I felt like I should share
Mm.
that might be useful for the rest of the group instead of just immediately going first and then feeling like I wanted to say more after other people had spoken. Right.
I feel you. I feel you.
Right.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I definitely observed that, yeah, in your energy. Because I feel like there was more peace towards the end of the process. There was more peace coming from you in accepting of like, yeah, sure, like when I'm invited, I'll come, or I'm okay to like stick around and just be present with whatever is happening. There's because it was almost like conditioned need to your point to speak or fill the silences,
Yeah.
but a lot of us feel uncomfortable with. And I think with human design, another piece that was huge, I feel for you, especially at the beginning, was the fact that you are an emotional being, which is a compliment. You have a defined solar plexus, meaning that's your strategy and that's how you are almost meant to make decisions, which is give yourself space and time and sometimes sleep, right? To sleep
Yes.
on things. And I think that was also very new and weird for you because you were so used to like getting things done and being the responsible one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it kind of goes back to one of those other perceptions that I had of myself. was that I was terrible at making decisions. I remember coming into, I probably said it right from the get-go that, oh my gosh, I start things and never finish them. Oh my gosh, I'm so bad at making decisions. But I think, again, it kind of goes back to what you were just saying, is I was not allowing that full emotional cycle to feel like I would go through the cycle, but not know that's what was happening. So I would be getting so upset at myself and, frustrating my husband because I couldn't make a decision when really, when I think back on like when we were buying a house and there was this one moment where I was like, no, we're not buying this house. We can't buy this house. Like it wasn't the right house. And that was at the point when I had gone through, the highs, the lows, the panic attack, everything had happened. And then I was finally at that point where I was like, no, I know what the answer is, and now I'm going to make it. And so making the decision from that place of neutrality has been so helpful to me. And it also allows me to give myself grace as well because I'm like, no, I'm not through the wave yet. So I don't need to make a decision.
Yeah. And I feel like you really became great and understanding, like when riding the wave versus not necessarily
Yes.
using it as an excuse, because we could be like, oh, I think I'm
Yeah.
not through the wave and use it as an excuse not to make a decision. I feel like what I've seen you um really embody where you would show up and be like, I feel like it's clearer now, or you would say, I feel like I'm not ready to answer this question because where I would give you prompts, you'd be like, I'm not ready to answer. I feel like I need more time, right? And giving yourself that space and safety to actually ride the wave because, you never know. Like, you never know because things may shift, right? And I feel like it's really interesting because I just recorded a podcast this morning. It so happened with my human design mentor, Kat, and we were talking about that, how emotional, emotional authority is the deepest awareness, but it may take as long as it needs to take.
Yes. Yes. And I think I've always struggled with like feeling like I was rushed.
Yeah.
Like I mean, most people that know me probably will remember me at some point saying like, no, 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 I can't, that's too quick. Like I need to like sit with this. Don't rush me kind of thing. And now I know where that's coming from because it's not that I'm being slow. It's not that I'm being lazy. It's that I need to feel all the feels so that I can make the best decision for me in that moment. And that's just been, again, so, so helpful for me because it also allows me to accept me for me.
That's such a huge piece of like authenticity in aligned careers. If I don't get to know me and then accept me, it's going to be really hard for me to find something that is going to be long lasting because then it means I'm building like a sandcastle. Because I'm not accepting me or not allowing myself to see all qualities, or maybe I don't like them. Like we were laughing with Kat as well this morning, where I was saying when I found out that I'm 5'1", I didn't like it. When I found out my left angle cross, I didn't like it. And so it
Right.
really takes
Yes.
some time to process and accept, oh, there's no right or wrong. There's no good or bad quality. It's all part of me. And the more I integrate it and accept it, again, the better I feel. Because I would assume even you still have your day job, but I think the way you show up is different. And boundaries was a big thing for you as well, at home and at work. Can you share a little more about that journey for you?
I feel like especially at work, boundaries have always been an issue for me because it's that being everything to everyone. And I think so, but I think there was two pieces to it. It was there was one piece that I wanted all the opportunities. Like if I saw something that was shiny, right? We always say the sparkly thing. I was like, well, I want to try that. So I'm going to volunteer. So I would volunteer for that. And then there would be something else that was like, oh, this looks sparkly. Like, I don't know if I'll be good at that, but I'll try that. And so I was doing it from a place of interest, like, and a place from wanting to help people. And so I was just collecting all these responsibilities. And then it made it very difficult to set boundaries, right? Because once you volunteer for something at a job, it's hard to unvolunteer. And then it creeps over into your personal life because, and I think some of it for me was not setting great boundaries at work so that then I wouldn't be able to give my family the time that I wanted to give my family. And then also feeling like I have all these responsibilities at work, but I also have chores that I need to do. And so I would just keep putting off chores. And I'm like, oh my gosh, our house is a mess. Like, I don't want my husband to have to be cleaning all the time and cooking all the time. But I would just be so exhausted because I wasn't setting those boundaries. And then dealing with that on top of having chronic pain, you want to do even less. So I really had to start asking for help, at work, saying, okay, I have these 10 things I need to do. What's the priority? Am I making the priority or is my boss making the priority? Whoever it was is fine. It's just, knowing that I can only do this amount of things in this one day so that I still have energy to go home, eat dinner, hang out with my husband, take the dogs out and not just feel like I have to go home and crash.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And again, a lot of the times, I coach clients and they will say, well, I know that, but really it's just not about knowing, it's about are you implementing? And are you
Yes.
changing the way that you show up? Because we're all very self-aware. We have a lot of access to information, but it doesn't matter if we're not acting on it and changing the patterns. And I feel like you did that, right? To the point where you said, oh, actually, I do feel like I have more space, or I'm giving myself permission to sleep right after work if I feel like I'm tired. There were weeks where you slept a
Yes.
lot.
Yeah, I remember there was a couple weeks where I would just come home every single night and I would just fall asleep. But I was like, you know what? It's okay. That's what my body needed.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I don't want to make it sound like it was easy because it was not easy. It's so difficult. And I think one of the biggest things for me was recognizing the patterns. I know
Mhm.
we've talked about patterns a lot is, are you creeping back into that same old pattern? Like the first step is recognizing the pattern itself and then breaking it. And it's very, very difficult to do that. Um, Especially when you're stressed. I think I also found that when I would get really stressed, if something was going on in any aspect of my life, I would recognize the pattern, but I wouldn't know how to break it. I'd be
Mm,
like, okay, I know I'm like going back there, but like I can't deal with this right now.
mm.
And I would really have to stop and pause and ground myself and sometimes clear the energy from other people, like in the moment.
Yep.
And then look at it from that neutral space of like, okay, is this a crisis? Is this not a crisis? Does this person need my help? Can they figure it out on their own? Like, is this person having their own emotional reaction and that's like a them problem and not a me problem? And again, it's just so difficult. And the only way that I was able to even take a step forward was to practice. The more I would do it, the more I would get confident about it. And eventually, I got to a point where I don't feel guilt about saying no to like that is probably a huge learning for me over the
For a
course of
people
this
pleaser,
program.
that's massive.
Yes. It's like, I mean, I would say I'm even at a point where, it's like a good 90-95% no guilt. Like, I don't want to say it's 100 because nothing's ever 100, but that's been a massive shift for me.
Well, you're an example that is possible. So thank you for being, because a lot of, people who are recovering people pleasers, a lot of them will say, but Vilma, you don't get how hard it is. I'm like, you're right. I may not get it. I have, I've always had it. It was easier always for me to say no than yes. I'm one of those people because of my, Sun in Aries, probably in manifestor energy, where I'm like, no. So for me to say yes was what I needed to learn. So no, I haven't had, I don't have a lived experience, but I worked with a lot of people who are recovering from that. And no, I don't know, it's like rewriting their whole rule book of how they interact with the world and other people. And there's fear of like, will I lose connection? Will people not like me? Am I going to be fired?
Yes.
Right? There's a lot of that.
Yeah, it makes me laugh a little bit because one of the things that I realized about myself during this process was that sometimes, you know how like when you're working with somebody or you have somebody in your family and you're like, there's just something about that person that irks me. Like what is it that, and I realized that it's people who can very easily say no. And I was like, I'm jealous of those people. The reason that they bug me sometimes or I get frustrated is because I'm jealous that they can do that so easily and I can't. And once I realized that, it gave me kind of a new respect for those people because it's not, right? It's not difficult for them. That's just in their nature.
Yeah.
And I was like, how do I learn that? Like, can you teach me?
Yeah.
For anyone out there that's, like, hey, it's really hard. It is. Like, we will recognize that right now. It is very hard, but it is possible to kind of to rewire that.
Exactly, rewire, right? Because we did a lot of thought work and you did a lot of amazing downloads, thought downloads that were, I feel like, also helpful for you to connect the dots.
Yes.
We would also joke with Rebecca that even though she was part of the group, I feel like, when she would do check-ins, it was not necessarily that you needed a lot of guidance or coaching. I think you wanted to share and you wanted a check-in, but it was very rarely you asking for support. Like as in, I'm stuck with this, right? Um, what do you think that is about? I'm fascinated by that. Like, how do you perceive this quality of yours?
Honestly, it's not something I ever had you not said that, the piece, I remember you saying to me, like, Rebecca, like, you just you just struggle through it. Like that really stuck with me. I think that phrase is like the struggling through it because I was like, yeah, I kind of do that. And it actually reminded me of another story when we were doing the the part of the program where we were supposed to ask, a couple of our colleagues or friends or family to tell us what they thought our strengths were. And my dad said one of mine was persistence. And I was like, "Oh, what are you talking about?" And he's like, "I tried to teach you to ride a bike and you didn't learn from me. You were out there every day trying to teach yourself how to ride this bike." And I had zero recollection of that happening at all.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that kind of goes, I think that's the underlying, thing for me is that persistence, is that it's just ingrained in me. And I think it's a good thing is that like, I like to learn things. I like to teach myself things. So I mean, we say struggle through it, but I look at that struggle in that instance as like, I'm just trying to figure it out and I want to do it on my own. And then I want to come to the group and kind of tell you guys how I did it.
Yeah. It's kind of like,
And
jokingly what men do, right? Where like, I have a problem, I'll go to man cave. I'm gonna solve it, and I'm gonna let you know when I solved it and how that went. And it's neither good or bad, it just is.
yes, yeah.
Maybe a little bit of that asking for help piece sometimes could be still like overshadowing a bit of like, I don't always like, let me just work through it and then only if I really need to or
Yeah.
really,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean there is a part of me that I think doesn't like to ask for help.
yeah.
So I'm sure that is a piece of it. Like, okay, like, but I think it's also comes from a place of if I can figure something out, I'm proud of myself. So I get a lot of confirmation from myself
Yeah.
if I can do something and not need too much support. And I think that's one of the reasons why I do feel like I have pretty good confidence in myself and like my own self-worth, has grown since I've been in the program. It is just because I do things that allow me to be like, yeah, Rebecca, you can pat yourself on the back for doing that thing. And I think a lot of people, like, I'd love to see more people do that for themselves
If it's aligned.
because
If it's
if it's
aligned. Because it's
aligned,
not
yeah.
aligned for everyone. Yeah. Yeah.
That is true. That is true. And I think that can be one of my blind spots too. Is like I always look at things like, oh, well, why can't you just do that? And everybody has choices. And like I did actually, someone actually called me out on it the other day and they were like, well, what if I can't do it the way that you do it?
Yeah.
And I
What
was
if it's
like,
not
what?
easy for me, right? And the way
Yeah,
I would say,
yeah,
why can't you say no? It's so easy. You'll be like, what are you talking about at the beginning?
yes.
And one thing that I kind of want to unpack with you, and I think that was going to be helpful for people who have like similar design as you in a sense that they have a lot of interest. And I think like you even reworked or like reframed that for you when you fought at first, or you were told that maybe you were non-committal or flaky when it comes to your interests and not finishing through. So how did you reframe that for yourself? How did you like accept that part of yourself? And what did you make it mean for your career? Because that was a big part of your career design and the offers and the business that you're building. Can you share a little more about that?
Yeah, I had a big gremlin there, I think, about, how I start a lot of projects. Even when I used to do a lot of crafting, I would research the craft, learn how to do it, buy all the supplies, and then never do it. And so I think the biggest reframe for me there was that it's okay to start things and not finish them because they weren't meant for me. Like I got all of it that I needed to get out of whatever the thing was by just learning about it, and that research part of me that just wants to do, look all the things up. I think that's also been really helpful in terms of career as well because I can try things out and I can start something, decide that that's not the direction I want to go in, change it. I also feel like I realize that not all of my ideas are meant for me to keep.
Mm.
Sometimes I will start something and tell someone about it, and they're like, "Oh, like that's a great idea. Let me take it from here." And letting that go and being like, "Okay, that wasn't mine to have," has been, I think, can be really helpful in terms of like business planning and trying to figure out what your offers are, and even in a job context is like sometimes you just have to plant the seed.
And I feel like another piece when you talk about like starting and maybe not finishing, giving yourself permission to do that because you're someone who loves like learning is one of your core values. You'll always be that person. So we can normalize that. And also discerning when you see something, checking in again with the
Mhm.
body. Is this my head that's having FOMO? Or Jeremy like maybe thinks it would be great. It would make sense. That's a good phrase. It would make sense for me to learn that because I might need it. Or whether it's my full body alignment of like, oh yeah, that's expansive. I feel like there's something there for me, even if my head doesn't get it. So I guess
Yes.
that as well, right? Before committing, it's a nice checkpoint.
Yeah, and there was a big piece I think when we were in the point where we were thinking of business ideas. I guess mine was publishing, right? Publishing came up, and I remember you asking me, "Well, is that like does it sound like it's a good thing in your mind?" And I was like, "No, it sounds like a terrible idea." And you said, "Well, that's how you know you're going in the right direction." So I think that was a piece that stuck with me too, is I can be very in my head to really stop and think about the thing and like, okay, what am I feeling in my gut? Like for me, like, am I feeling butterflies? Like, am I feeling what is in my gut? What is, in my fingers?
Yeah.
Again, because, getting that yes or no, is it something I should pursue or is it something maybe I want to hold for now?
Yeah. I love that. And I feel like your story as well, your journey was a little bit unique in a sense that we didn't try to choose one path for you and necessarily like cram you into one business model, which I think we joked, right? It's there are pros and cons to that. The pros is like, oh, I
Yes.
feel like can create something where every part of the business feels exciting and good for me and like an extension of me. The cons is like no one's done it before like that. So it's not like I can sit there, finish a course, and have a
Yes.
manual on how to create and release something that doesn't exist in the way that I envision it or going to envision if I continue taking these steps. So I'd love to share, to ask you to share with the listeners because there are like core, I think pillars. I think we had three core kind of pieces upon which you decided to start building the business. So maybe we can move there and you can share a little bit more of what these were and how we started weaving them together. And you're still in the process of just working through it, just full transparency. So yeah, can we talk about that?
Yeah, yes. So I mean, I'll start with kind of the publishing blog. Like we kind of communication is a big piece of this. and really getting information out there, like about knowledge and sharing wisdom. And so we kind of landed on starting with a blog, which I actually had blogged in the past and kind of left it. And then so coming back to it, was kind of interesting for me because I really never thought I was going to go back to blogging. And then there was a big piece involved about, I'm going to say advocacy work, because even though I flip-flop between whether I like that term or not, but ultimately it's about being a leader in the space of chronic and invisible illness, caregivers and anybody that's just curious about those things. I always felt like they had to be separate. Like, how do I, be a writer, be an editor, be this researcher, communicate things, and also not have to keep that advocacy work separate? There's also that piece that came up with us in terms of like consulting or being that guide, but not wanting to do one-on-one work. Again, something that was coming up that might be helpful for your listeners to hear too was that as we were coming toward the end of the program, I was starting to look at a lot of everyone else's things coming together and it being, very clear. And I was starting to feel like, oh, like, but I don't, I mean, I have clarity, but I was like starting to get jealous of everyone else that just had like one thing that they were putting out, forgetting that that's not what, I want to do or was meant to do. And so I think, yeah, starting kind of with a blog, building up into consulting, bringing in my love for flower essences and alternative remedies, while also respecting the fact that conventional medicine is also needed. There was all those pieces that were coming together and thinking about, courses and being a teacher to some extent or an educator. I always said I didn't like teacher, right? I like educator. So, but also protecting my own peace, because there's a big part of me that really just wants mental balance, wants inner peace. And I think there's also was that the justice piece that was coming in as well for me is just how do I find a way to take all these different things that I love and that are inherently me and make them into something.
And I feel like it's so beautiful, right? When you are putting it all together. And if it's like scrambled like that, a lot of people would be like, how do you make money? Like, they could hear you out. And I'm sure you get those reactions because you're at the beginning of the stage. You just launched the website and the blog, and then you're going to be adding these services and offers. And yeah, at the beginning, it will feel, to your point, you look at someone who has a more linear track, or maybe they chose a modality and they're like, okay, so now I need to launch a business, create an offer, study,
Yes.
wherever. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm still like figuring out how they all come together. And the only way to figure it out is start taking those actions and be like, okay. And I think another piece with you as well that you would share sometimes, because I think is helpful for people to hear, because they often have that quality of like not fully being able to see the end result because it's evolving as you go, and then getting lost
Yes.
in the details as well of like, oh, but what, I remember with the words, with colors, or with the blog when you were setting up, and then really learning how to discern whether it's, oh, my emotional wave has not passed, so I cannot make the decision regarding the title, or whether it's the old perfectionistic kind of part of you coming out. And then that's the mantra that we all said is like, done is better than perfect. Because if it was
Yes.
up to you, you will never release the blog. You will never do, because you'll always be updating it. Can you share more about that?
Yes. Yes. I'm so glad you brought that up because I think to give a little bit more background on that is I think it'll be important for everyone to kind of know that I've worked in so many different titles, I guess. Like I've been a graphic designer, I've been an editor, I've done medical legal regulatory submissions for, pharmaceutical companies, and I've worked in HR and operations. And so having worked in so many different areas or so many different types of things, like I can get so stuck in the details, especially because the designer brain comes in and goes, oh my gosh, I've got to pick the right font. And editor brain comes in and says, oh my God, those words don't make sense. Like I need to make sure that this title, you know, feels right. which I mean, things do need to feel right, but I need to make sure all the, this thing has no spelling errors. I think I released one of my blog posts this week, and I found myself, you guys will probably laugh at this. I found myself reading through it and I was like, oh my gosh, I made 6 typos, but the post was 5,000 words. So 6 typos out of 5,000 words is really not that bad. And because it's a living, breathing document, I was able to go back and fix it. And then I remember I was getting stuck on like the legal aspects of things. And so my brain would go into all these different rabbit holes of like this detail and that detail and the other detail and what detail is important and what's not important. And so I think the biggest advice, right, that you gave was what you just said. Done is better than perfect. And also what looks like a C job to me is probably an A+ job to someone else. I think it's just been so valuable to actually do something
Mm-hmm.
and see what works and what doesn't work because all I would get stuck in data collection. I remember there was one moment where I was like, "Oh, but I need to have this meeting with someone else," and you were like, "But do you need to have the meeting?" And I was like, "Well, I think I have need to have the meeting." And then I determined I didn't need to have the meeting, and I never had it. So
Yeah.
I think that that was something just always in my mind that I thought was funny was that you were like, "I'm going to call you out on this. Do you really need that?"
Yeah, because the mind will create those artificial hurdles, and sometimes
Yeah.
they are important data points, and sometimes they're just bullshit. Because I even said, I said,
Yes.
listen, collecting data is part of the process, it's a stage. However, if you skipped it, you don't need to necessarily go through it if you feel like you can move forward without having that data. And it's good that you were
Yeah.
honest with yourself and you were like, actually, yeah, that's a good point. We forget to question. We
Yeah.
want to question our mind, not to go crazy, but we want to question what it's telling us. It's always about the feeling. Everything that we do or don't do is about the feeling. So when I'm trying to be perfect, what am I trying to gain or what am I trying to avoid? I might be trying to avoid being criticized. I might want to gain validation or approval or compliment, to your point where you said recognition. So if we're being really, really stuck up with that or rigid around that, we want to really check in is like, what am I trying to avoid or gain here? Because there's a wound there. It has nothing to do with the steps.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's actually something that I think I realized about myself too is, when I was younger, my mom can confirm this, is that I would always say, I don't care what people think about me. When I care deeply what people think. And that really was something that I had to work through in this program is recognizing that, accepting that was the truth. Because I was fighting it. I was like, no, I don't care. Like, I really don't care what they think, but I do.
Yeah.
And we kind of we uncover things that we don't want to admit are true. Even I think when we were doing I don't remember which one it was, but I remember there was one that I got. Was it the
The
Peacemaker
peacemaker
or
anagram.
and I and and I was like, I hate this. Like, I don't want to be this. I remember it like I remember coming to one of our live sessions and saying, I was so mad about that. And then I was like, wait, why am I mad about this?
But it's
Because
beautiful. And I
yeah,
feel like you're not wrong about it because also just like, again, looking at your astro chart, you're a Libra, no, you're Aquarius sun, remind me.
yeah, Aquarius, Sun, Libra, Moon.
Aquarius, Sun, Libra, Moon. So like, and that is literally what you might be living this inner conflict where like Aquarius is very individual and is very, let me figure it out. And that's partly why you probably enjoy figuring it out because Aquarius is great with like riddles. But then again, the Libra Sun, which the Libra is very much about other people and making sure I keep the peace and making sure that, everyone is happy. And Capricorn is just grounded and stubborn, right? So you do everything that you just said, you do contain all of those. And the question is then, how do I translate it in a business setting where I feel like all of those parts are heard? And I'm not just leading with Libra, I'm not just leading with Aquarius, I'm not just leading with Capricorn, like all of them are there. And going back to like your business offering, I think if people are like, so, okay, so what do you do? And like, how do you build it? I think like a piece that a lot of people do struggle with is phases and phasing your business building out, and starting with just a setup. For you was a blog, the first one. And then let's talk about what is the first paid offer and what does that look like, right? Is it a product? Is it a service? And then seeing whether you can add consulting, and then seeing whether you can add workshops, right? Really allowing yourself to do it phase by phase, but to your point, not getting stuck in perfectionism, just moving through it, moving through it, moving through it until you have this diverse offering, which I think is representative of you. Like you need to have variety as well.
I think what's coming up for me too is, especially when we had our on one where we were talking about offerings and freebies and the lead magnets and things like that. I think it was so helpful when you said don't overcomplicate it, because in my mind, even as I was brainstorming, I was like, oh, it's got to have all these pieces, right? This piece and this piece, and it's got to be this kit and this thing. And you're just like, it could just be one thing.
Yeah.
Right, we were talking about quizzes, right? Like you could just start with something very simple and then something simple and then something else simple, and they all build up on each other. And that was so helpful for me. I feel like when I really think about it, when I feel into something, that's what I want to do. But when I think about it, my brain wants to complicate it.
And again, that's great awareness to know that, and then question like, how can I make it easy? Like, what's the solution? And it's such a great way, but it really is just a practice and it's a skill. A lot of people are like, oh, I wish I could question myself like you do. I'm like, I earned it by practicing it. Now I
Yes.
naturally go to, but like my head said that and I don't like it. I'll be like, okay, what is the way? Or like people will give me like impossible solution and they would give me like zero sum situation. If I win, they lose. If they lose, I win. And I'll be
Hmm.
like, always, maybe I asked some of you as well on the call. It's like, what's a win-win? There's always a win-win where you benefit and they benefit. Same with our careers, right? Like, what is that solution for you where like you benefit because you get to be yourself, but also the world benefits
Yes.
because they get your authentic light. And that's when you're the most powerful and potent. Um,
Yeah. And I think I mean, that's really what I want for myself and for others. Like, I don't want to be the person that has to solve everyone else's problems.
yeah.
I want to give them information so that they can
Yeah.
solve their own problems in the way that's authentic and in alignment to themselves.
Another piece that I see with some of the light workers, which Rebecca is, the people who want to contribute help, is they really often, the reason why they struggle to launch businesses is because they try to fit themselves into available business models that are out there, for instance, one-on-one. So someone like Rebecca, I know like we didn't even mention like about the flower essence as something that you really love. And one of the tracks that you were suggested when you were studying was to open up the one-on-one practice. And you had resistance to that. And then you're like, well, if I like it, why can't I do that? And then that makes people spin and resist launching anything. When flower essences is not wrong, is how you teach it and how you approach it is what's the piece where we need to find alignment for you. And I feel like giving yourself permission to build something like this where you only focus on sharing, and then you're like, listen, I'm going to teach you, and then you can do whatever you please because I'm not here to hold your hand through it. It's not my superpower or my interest.
Totally. I think that was also a very important piece of this process too. As I remember, I think in one of the live sessions, I was talking about how I had actually gone through a coaching program. Not because I wanted to be a coach necessarily, but because I thought the skills would be helpful in human
But
resources.
then,
It was kind of pushing everybody to do one-on-one work and practitioner work. And then, when I was thinking about flower, oh, I love flower essences. Like I would love to teach people how to choose them and, make their own combinations. But I don't really want to be like a one-on-one practitioner or a consultant in that way. And I was like, but then I can't, like, what can I do?
a lot of the times as well, when you look at your like work experience and look at all the, like you said, so many positions that you had, did you already notice how beautifully they are contributing to this aligned business for you? Because literally everything that you've done, like graphic designing, editing, writing, like all of this is coming together. We can lean on some of that experience for you. And I find that a lot with people where like nothing was random or accidental.
Yes, yes. And I think that's one of aside from the clarity, I mean, it kind of goes in with the clarity that I was looking for from this program was I really out of alignment or was I kind of working my way toward alignment with all these different pieces that I'd already learned. And exactly what you said, as I started building my blog, I was like, oh, like I can design these things and like I'm designing this website and I missed doing that type of work. And, the editing obviously came in. I mean, even as we were going through this program, I think my job at my job, my day job, changed like 3 times. And I kept saying, man, why does my job keep changing? And I think last week I mean, Catherine's coming up again. I was leaving her a voice message and I said, I'm going to reframe this. I said, my job is changing because it's trying to show me the things that I can still get out of this job.
Mm,
And if I'm going to be in this job and like I'm going to be doing a great job, for those projects that I'm working on, like the universe wants me to be doing something there that is going to help me later.
yeah.
So I think that that was also something that I kept resisting, like, oh my God, this is happening again. Why is this? I mean, it's nothing new, right? My job has changed so many times since I've, been in the working world. But at this moment, I kept saying, why is this happening again? Why has this happened 3 times in the last, 4 months or, 6 months? And now I kind of get it.
Yeah. Or even if it's not the reason, like I think what you just beautifully, thank you for,
Yes.
showing us how to do fort work on the spot of like, okay, so this is happening. So now I have a choice. I can sit here and be like, oh God, why is it? Do you know what I mean? Like put myself in the victim position and be like, why is it happening to me? And bitch about it to everyone I meet. Or at some point I could be like, okay, so this is happening. So probably there's something there for me. And before maybe I don't know yet, but what I can do is choose the story and the narrative and the lens through which I'm looking at this experience. And I can ask myself, how is it serving me? It's like, oh, it's serving me because it's probably teaching me what I'll need for my business. And that's the choice. And that belief feels so much more supportive and exciting of like, oh, I wonder what else is going to come up that I'll need, right? That I can learn at this job.
I do think that there is a big piece too of this where like I wasn't coming to the program because I hated my job,
Hmm.
right? Like I love that I get a lot of opportunities to try a lot of things, but it was just that there was so many things I didn't know how to filter it. And so I think that, I think that maybe is an important thing for anyone out there that is like, well, like I don't hate my job. Why would I, do that self-development and things? But I think it doesn't really matter. It's like if you're looking for that alignment and something that's going to put you in a place that you're you just have a lot of passion about what you're doing. That's why I ended up here, not because I was necessarily trying to get out of something.
That's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up because I feel like sometimes I'm guilty of that too. When I talk about career change, I talk about these big 180 shifts because I do kind of specialize in them. I attract people who want a big change. But sometimes just going through, and probably you will attest to that, Rebecca, like going through this process is a lot more about self-awareness and self-acceptance. And then from that space, looking at your career through a different lens. But someone could go through the program, take that knowledge, and just slightly adjust the role at work or
Yes.
advocate for different responsibilities. And that can make such a huge difference for their experience in their careers.
Yeah. And I think that's actually a piece that was a lot different in your program too, that I appreciated is that, a lot of programs that you go into, it's very like, we're teaching you this and you're going to go off and you're going to create your own business and you're going to do this thing. But you created a space that was very much like, well, not everyone is meant to have their own business. Like sometimes, like you said, it's a little bit of a shift. It's asking for a different responsibility, you know, and I think that was something that was very refreshing.
And I feel like
Yeah.
sometimes when you work with someone like me, because I am intuitive and I do get some answers, what was really important for me as well to create a lot of space for people to arrive there themselves. Because something that some
Yeah.
people arrive to, I might have felt like month two, and I might have, maybe alluded to it because it's really hard because I'm so honest and I do have verbal diarrhea sometimes. Right. But like the most important piece for me is like, are you leaving feeling like this feels like you? Because, at the end of the day, no one can tell us what alignment feels like for you specifically. I can't even do that.
Yeah.
No one can do that. So again, that's why teaching how to listen to the body and then use that as a navigation for the rest of your life for every decision, I feel like is such a gift we could give ourselves. Okay. Is there anything else about the actual process that maybe was an aha moment breakthrough that you want to share?
I think the blueprint process in itself was, I mean, it was so much fun. I don't know if everyone, I'm sure not everyone would agree that it was fun,
Yeah.
but even in the darkest moments, it was still fun for me because I loved how it was broken out into different sections. You didn't quite know how it was going to come together. And we had like our printed out sheets. And I remember mine was just totally right. It was
Yours-
just totally covered. At one point I had all the stuff filled and I was getting so overwhelmed because I'm like, oh my God, there's so much stuff. But then when we actually pared it down and took out the important pieces, like it creates this beautiful blueprint that you can hang on your wall and constantly refer to. And, I look back at it now and I'm like, I did that. Like I
Mm,
created that blueprint and it is totally me. Every bit of it makes sense. I think that process was so important for me to be able to do it bit by bit and then create something that's so beautiful at the end.
yeah. 100%. I love that. I love the blueprint process. I love all of them. I feel like also one thing that I heard from you maybe, and I don't know if it was your emotional authority, maybe, I'm not sure, where because the beginning of the process is very dreamy and feminine and kind of there are no
Yes.
limits and let's get to know our true selves and let's bond and cry and laugh together. And then when we go into career design, it's starting to feel a little different because we're starting to make decisions and make it translated into a business or a career setting, what we see on a blueprint. And then the last parts can be quite tangible. There are finances, there are timelines, there are offers. And I think was it you who said it was like, oh, I feel like jolted, like suddenly going back to real world and actually building businesses.
Yes.
Can you
Yeah.
share about that?
It was, I don't know if I was the only one that said it, but yes, I definitely felt like I had been living in such a masculine state that the more feminine, like built, looking at the blueprint, the astrology, all this, like, I loved being there in that space because it felt good. And then when we got into that last month, I think I said like, man, it got real aggressive real fast. Right. But in the best way, it's looking back at it now, I feel like it might have been good for me to be in that state a little bit longer.
It's kind of
Yeah.
like, oh, before you know it, because I think the process sometimes lulls you a little bit of like, because we do create
Yeah.
space, right, to be able to make sure there are integration weeks. And I guess, yeah, towards the end, I'm like, my job is also to make sure that you're leaving knowing what you're building as much as
Yes.
possible and have a plan and a timeline to do that. And this process cannot last forever. So yes, at
Right.
some point we will have to ground. And for some people who
Yes.
love action, it's actually refreshing and for people maybe like yourself, we're like, oh, it's so nice to like just be in a dreamy space. And you're
Yes.
bringing me back to this space. But again, hopefully that masculine does not feel like toxic, but more like grounding and supportive of
Yeah.
like when we're building something, masculine is involved. Masculine is a builder.
Yes. I think it felt like a stark reminder that we had to go back to that masculine state. But
Yeah.
ultimately, I think coming out of the program, even being out of it now for a couple of weeks, I feel like the two are coming together quite
Mm.
nicely. I can tap into both of them. Like, okay, I've got to do this. I've got to take this action, but then I can also still be like a little bit dreamy on the side.
That's
And
exactly
they
what
kind
it
of,
is,
yeah.
dancing between the two and knowing when to tune into which. So can you share with the listeners a little more about like what you're working on? Because you have the name, which you also, which I think is really cool for your blog. We didn't mention that. And just share what you're working on, what you're going to be releasing, and where can people find you and follow you.
Yes, so the blog is called Compassionate Contrarian. I mean, ultimately, what I'm trying to do is create a space where it can be this, I guess, a comprehensive resource is what I'm trying to say, where it pulls conventional medicine, conventional practices with alternative practices, and then also brings in, a piece of spirituality kind of into it. So I think I ended up saying like ultimately, I want to help people navigate allopathic, alternative, and arcane practice perspectives. There is a big separation in those things right now where it's like kind of one side or the other, or, conventional medicine versus alternative medicine. And quite frankly, I think they can all work together. Like I wouldn't be where I am in my with my conditions if I didn't use both. And just because somebody uses drugs or, medication doesn't mean they can't also benefit from flower essences or homeopathy or all the many other things. And then bringing in that spirituality is also so important because everybody looks at things a different way. And so I think to have a place where everyone can kind of come together, see all the different modalities kind of in one place is my ultimate goal. And to give personal stories, to give real information, and to inject a little bit of humor into it too, is, we can all laugh at ourselves. So right now I have the blog. There's a couple of posts on there right now, and I'm working on, getting some new stuff out. It's compassionatecontrarian.com. And then I'm also on Instagram. I think that's where I'm the most active. And then I'm also working on, I think my first like freebie and offering will be around flower essences and kind of teaching more about that because I'm very passionate about it. And then also working toward giving people more information about how to look at things from a critical compassion
Mm.
kind of perspective, because I think we do need to look at things from a kind space and a kind heart, but also realize that we can be critical and we can question things.
Mm.
Yes, we can question. What did I say on, I think my last post? Question boldly, care deeply, and persist with purpose.
I love
And I
that.
think that kind of sums it up.
That sums you up as well, I feel like.
Yes.
Like that's the energy. What can be kind of confusing for people, where you can be kind, but also like stand your ground and question and really, advocate for yourself. Again, that word, but like really advocate for yourself and maybe for others who don't have that voice or don't feel comfortable. Or like, again, especially in medical fields, I feel like in Western medicine, that's my experiences. We sometimes feel intimidated and we don't
Hmm.
always ask all the right questions because we're assuming that the doctor should know. And
Yeah.
no matter how assertive I am, I've been in those positions where like maybe you're stressed or you're dysregulated and you
Yeah.
know what to ask. And now I feel like every time I go, I would like sit there and ask all the questions and be like, well, what does that mean? And
Yeah.
where is it coming from? And sometimes they would tell me, I don't know. And I'll be like, wow, but you were so confident in prescribing me something where you're not entirely sure what the root cause is. Like, because for me, it's all about the root cause, right?
Yeah. Actually made me think of something too, is because the best doctors that I've ever had have been the ones who's told me that they didn't know. So
Mm,
that's what was coming up for me, is
yeah.
like just having that brutal honesty of like, listen, I know you're going through this and I don't have an answer. Actually makes you feel better, especially when you're dealing with chronic pain, is like, okay, like let's work together to figure this out. And it's that collaborative, you know, it's just the
No,
participatory part of
exactly.
it and the collaboration.
So, but yeah, advocating for yourself and doing it compassionately. I love the whole take. I think it's really, for me, it feels like so new. Maybe it's not new. I'm under researched in this field, but I feel like that's such a unique voice that needs more, like we need to magnify spaces like this and communities that you'll be creating like that for people to, I think a lot of people feel similarly, but they just go either or. We go alternative or we go like conventional and it's either
Yeah.
or again. And I feel like the truth is always in the middle, which is I think that's what you're trying to share with the world as well.
Yeah. I think there's fear around it too, about, can I really say that I'm in the middle? Because
Mm,
other people are going to judge, like,
yeah.
oh, like, oh, it's because it's a little bit weird for you to
Yeah.
be in the middle these days. I think there's actually a lot of people out there that are in the middle and that
Yeah.
look at things that way. I just think that those are not the voices that are getting amplified. And my goal is really to give people, a space where they can express those personal opinions, right? We're not medical professional, right? Disclaimer, I'm not a medical professional. Like this is my personal, a lot of what will be on the blog will be, I'm not going to claim that I'm not going to be biased because all of us have inherent bias, but this is personal perspectives. I'm hoping to bring other people on to give their perspectives and, you know, we're not giving medical advice. We're giving you knowledge and power so that you can make the best choices for yourself.
And community and
Yeah,
like-mindedness,
and
like
community.
what
Yep.
you found again in this group, in this process, like women going through similar fears and challenges and
Yes.
similar process. And I feel like that alone is already healing. And the reason why these spaces are not, they don't get attention because they're not controversial enough. Because it's all about division in this world, right? That's what gets you the clicks. That's where like really strong headlines. And here we're talking about again the and uniting and win-win. And unfortunately, it's still not the mainstream yet. I really hope we're moving towards that space where like, oh, it actually doesn't matter. It's like what works for you, or like what do you actually,
Yeah.
we don't need to be dogmatic about it. I love that. So we're gonna leave the links in the show notes, all of the links, all of the things about you.
Yes. I mean, down the road, I would love to do something too about combining the flower essences and color therapy as well, because I
Yes.
think that would be fascinating as well for everyone.
That would be so, so interesting. Okay, cool. So to wrap things up, I always ask every career changer who comes on the podcast, what is the some advice that you would give either your past self when you were a little more confused than now, or just other career changers who are either considering changing, considering working with a coach or joining a program, or they just feel lost? What are some of the things that you tell them?
I mean, I think my biggest piece of advice would be to remind people to tap into their inner child. Because, right, I think I've said this a couple times throughout the program too, is that, when we're kids, we don't have conditioning. Kids say whatever they're thinking and they just do whatever they want, not obviously they do what feels right to them. And so I think tapping back into that inner child that has like a lot of curiosity, a lot of imagination, that child knows the real you. So listen to them because they will guide you. I've found that I'm coming back to that child. Like the things that I'm pursuing now are things that I liked then
Mm,
or I continue to like but pushed aside. And so I think that is a probably my biggest piece of advice. And then also kind of to speak your truth if it's in alignment and remember that other people's emotions are not your burden to carry.
mm,
I think that's something that I also learned. And if you feel like you need help getting clarity, even if you're in a space where you're in a position that you kind of like, it's good, like you can still always get something out of these types of programs, and you'll end up in a community with other people that understand. And I hope that I get to stay in touch with all of the all of the women in our group because they're all awesome.
wow, they truly are. And I feel like this piece, the community, and again, I see that over and over again on this podcast, is like a broken record. A lot of the times when we're going through these pivotal changes, especially if they are not conventional or not understood by those around us, it can feel like a very lonely journey because it's almost like we're being questioned. Either people speak that out or they think that and we feel it. So then we just don't feel safe sometimes to share what we're working on, right? And I know you were also quite selective with who you were sharing and when you were sharing things, just intuitively feeling out. So being a part of the room of the girls that are truly supportive, like you were helping each other, you're testing each other's offers. I know you're working again with Catherine. Can't believe how often Catherine came up in this conversation. Just the manifestor energy.
She's gonna be laughing when she listens.
It was like, oh my goodness, maybe you should have recorded with Catherine. But I know that you are testing each other's offers and helping each other out. So I feel like even that for the business support for each other was also cool to see, how you rally
Yeah.
and, celebrate each other.
I think for me it was kind of a no-brainer. Like when I got to the point where I was thinking of where I came back to you to kind of mirror the beginning of this. When I came back and found you, even though I never really lost your podcast, I was still listening. Is it was because I was supposed to be in this group with these women at
Mm,
this time. And so, if you have that pull, like to your listeners, if someone's listening to this and they have that pull and they're seeing those angel numbers and the signs,
yeah.
definitely do it because you will get way more out of it than you ever imagine.
Yeah. And you will get what you're meant to get. And sometimes it's not going to
Yeah.
look like what you expected it. And so being open to
Yes.
remember, like the phrase we said, and everyone said, trust the process. So, like,
Yes.
even that's something that the girls would definitely take away from them because that's what I said. And then that's what they started to say is trust the process. Makes no sense. Let's see what next week brings. Moving on. Yeah.
Yes.
So if you feel like it, trust the process. But yeah, I loved having you on. Thank you so much for sharing, Rebecca, and being so open and vulnerable, even about your childhood patterns and just other patterns like perfectionism and being interested in many things that so many of us can relate to. But again, I think like I want to honor you for showing up, listening to yourself, but then also implementing and doing the work, even when it's not always straightforward or like some of those patterns will come back bite us in the ass. Still see you showing up and following through. And that's exactly what it looks like. A lot of the times we won't have clarity. A lot of the times we're just like, okay, let me just solve this problem and see how I feel or what comes up the next day. And that is entrepreneurship. I say that all the time for people. There's no manual, but so whatever you choose, make sure you enjoy it. So at least showing up for it is going to be like interesting, fascinating, and calling you in all the time. Yeah. So thanks so much. I'll probably still be in touch with you. But
Oh
thank you.
yes, I'm sure we will stay in touch.
Yeah, but thank you so much for sharing your story again. And to the listeners, bye. Thank you for spending time with me today. If you enjoy this content, please make sure you subscribe to this podcast and leave a quick review to help us share the message of aligned work with the world. And if you'd like to learn more about how to find and transition into your very own purpose-led career or business that feels like getting paid for being yourself, make sure you check out the episode notes below. Have a wonderful week.